Hey guys, so the new Stein Gates series has just started and we are a couple of episodes in, or maybe you're watching this when Stein Gate 0 has finished and you're just about to pick up the anime. Either way, in this video I'm going to get you guys up to speed on everything you need to know to understand Stein Gate 0, hopefully making things less confusing. But before we start, we'd like to let you guys in for a treat with our new sponsors Anime Ryo, where you guys can get awesome anime clothing and accessories. If you use the discount code ABD Squad, you can get yourself a 10% discount. The link is in the description and comment section below, so make sure to check it out. Oh, and guys, like always, I want to give you guys a fair warning that I might butcher many pronunciations here and there, so please forgive me in advance, and don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell to stay updated. With that out of the way, let's cue the intro. Now, Steins Gate 0 anime was released 7 years after the original Stein Gates anime, so it's understandable if a lot of you forgot what happened in Steins Gate. So first, let's quickly recap on the original Stein Gates anime, but before I do, I'm going to give you guys a disclaimer that this video is a spoiler for those who haven't watched Stein Gates. Now, the story of Stein Gates takes place in Akihabara, Japan, and it is revolved around our main protagonist Rintaro Okabe, who is a self-proclaimed mad scientist. Him, along with his friends Iteru Hashida and Mayuri Shina, created a small research institution situated above a CRT store and dubbed it the Future Gadget Laboratory. Now, as the story progressed, we are presented with many more characters, including the introduction of Kurusu Makase, who ends up helping him and later becomes a love interest for our main protagonist. We are also met with the mysterious John Titor, who guides our characters, giving them the information they need. Now, the plot itself is derived from the conceptual creation of a time machine using a microwave and a phone, which then can send text messages to the past, later being dubbed as D-mail. These messages had the ability to alter the timeline. However, our main protagonist happens to have an ability which allows him to retain his memory of the events that occurred before the timeline changes. He dubs this ability as Reading Steiner. Now, if you guys can remember, the first timeline shift which is shown to us is at the very beginning of the series. This was even before we are actually introduced to the plot. But if you guys don't remember, let me jog your memories. This was when Kurusu first meets Okabe at the Akihabara radio hall, claiming to have bumped into him 15 minutes earlier. She is later found by Okabe laying in a pool of blood, and then we see Okabe texting Iteru about it. Immediately after sending the text, the people in the streets all disappear, and the satellite time machine he saw earlier appears to have crashed into the roof of the radio tower. Obviously, at that time he didn't know it was a time machine. Now, during this moment, we weren't too concerned about this timeline, neither were we thinking about this timeline shift. And as the series went on, a lot of other things happened which took our minds away from this weird introduction. With Okabe's progression, we started learning and discovering what was actually happening, like how the time machine works, learning about IBN 5100, and along with finding out who the main antagonist of the series is, known as CERN, the research organization who had worked on time travel before but had not been able to actually make a breakthrough. So once they found out about the Future Gadgets lab inventions, they decided to take matters into their own hands and to pursue obtaining the invention. This led to the devastating loop where Mayuri dies, and later we found out that CERN is actually even a bigger threat, not just to our lab members but to the whole world, as later it is revealed by John Titor that in one timeline, CERN causes World War III due to them completing their time machine. Later, the plot thickens as the unknown mysterious John Titor reveals himself or herself to be Suzuha Amane. Now, a lot of other things happen, but I'm hoping I jogged your memories. If not, then make sure to be attentive, as to really explain Stein Gate 0, I'm going to have to go over the different timelines and their point of divergence. But to do that, let's clarify some key terms, like Attractor Fields, World Lines Convergence, and World Lines Divergence. Okay, so here we go. An attractor field is a group of world lines that leads to a single converging point. So to break that down, imagine a group of strands coiled up together into a thread, while each strand may be slightly different, but they are ultimately part of the same great thread and they continue onto the same end result. So each strand is a world line and the entire coiled thread is the attractor field, which is the collection of those world lines. To understand this in a real life example, try to imagine one of those Scooby-Doos or Rex laces. If you ever made a 3-stranded spiral, you would notice even though each lace is separate, when they are stranded together, they make a braid. So the braid could be seen as the attractor field and each lace could be seen as an individual timeline. Now this might have been a bad example, but I hope you guys understood what I'm trying to say. And the World Line Convergence is simply just an event that causes these multiple world lines to stick within the attractor field. So if we go back to our example, you could see each knot within the braid or strand as a convergence. An example of this in the anime is the event of Mayuri's death. That incident can never be changed as it's a convergence point, so it will happen in all world lines of that same attractor field. It might happen in different ways, but the end result will always be the same, as the world line will continue to converge on her death, unless the world line changes to a world line within an attractor field where Mayuri doesn't die, which will obviously have to be in another attractor field. So I explained what's an attractor field and world line convergence, but what about world line divergence? Well, like the World Line Convergence, a World Line Divergence is an event, but this is where when you make a change to the past and a specific convergence didn't intervene, the world will switch states and you will enter or create an entire new timeline free from that specific convergence. The divergence between each timeline can be actually measured with a divergence meter that was brought back by Suzuhu from the year 2036. The divergence meter can then be used to calculate what attractor field the universe is in by looking at the divergence value. Now in the series we are exposed to a couple of attractor fields and a multiple world lines, but the two main attractor fields we are exposed to is the beta attractor field and the alpha attractor field, where both fields have different convergence points and different end results. For instance, in the beginning of the series, going back before Hokage sent his first D-mail about Kurusu getting stabbed, that timeline was in the beta attractor field, where one of the convergence points was Hokage witnessing Kurusu in the pool of blood. Another convergence is that a version of Suzuha Amane manages to successfully land her time machine onto the roof of the radio building, and if we measure the beta attractor field with the divergence meter, it will fall within the divergence value of 1 to 1.99, meaning any timeline in that range will always converge together. The final convergent result of this beta attractor field was World War III, as the world was fighting amongst themselves for Kurusu's time travel thesis. When Okabe sent the first D-mail, it shifted the world line to the point where the divergence value changed into the 0 to 0.99 range. This range falls within the alpha attractor field. Most of the events we see in the anime are from this alpha timeline. The death of Mayuri is also a convergence in this attractor field, and the final convergent result of this alpha attractor field is the dystopian world where CERN actually ends up making a time machine, then enslaving the whole of humanity. Now you guys might be thinking, how the hell did one text change the divergence value so much that the timeline changed into a new attractor field? Well, let me explain. By sending the first D-mail, Okabe accidentally tipped off CERN about the time travel, as CERN were literally spying on anything and everything to do with time machines, knowing that it is possible. CERN develops their own time machine, eventually taking over the world. Apparently, Okabe's D-mail to the past put CERN on Kurusu's trail, and they managed to steal her thesis, later using her to help create the machine. Now, the biggest convergence in this timeline is the fact that Kurusu is still alive. This goes back to either she was saved by CERN and later used to create the time machine, causing the dystopian universe leading to Suzuha's intervention, and because in this timeline CERN ends up having a monopoly on time machine, and when Suzuha goes back in time to 2010 to stop CERN, her machine is in a complete version. This causes her coordinates to be slightly off. She then materializes in the roof of the radio building rather than on it, and because of this, Dr. Nakamachi's conference is cancelled. He and Kurusu never meets there, and she doesn't get stabbed, and then CERN is able to obtain the information to create a time machine, later even using the future gadget lab resources resources to help them much further, and in the process Mayuri's death occurs, hence Okabe going through that experience multiple times. So it's kind of a circular event. No matter what happens in the Alpha Attractor Field, it seems as though CERN pretty much always wins. Now you guys are probably wondering, if both Alpha and Beta Attractor Field consist of timelines which leads to some sort of dystopia, either being war or enslavement, then which timeline leads to a peaceful ending? Well, that would be the Steins Gate. Yes, if some of you guys didn't actually know what Stein Gates even represented, now you know. Stein Gates is a possible world line between two attractor fields, and because it lies exactly between the two fields, neither attractor fields affects it, allowing an entirely new future. And in this case, the Stein Gates timeline has the divergence number of 1.048596. Although it falls under the Beta Attractor Field, it also is influenced by the Alpha Field, as it is not so far off from the Alpha divergence value, and because of this it's influenced by both fields. So ultimately it does not reach the final convergent result found in either fields, since in this world line CERN did not complete their time machine and World War III did not happen. Neither did the world domination by CERN take place. This world line is where the true end of the main plot occurs, dubbed the Stein Gate by Okabe. However, this world line only exists due to the help from the future around episode 23, after Okabe successfully deletes the D-mail stopping CERN, which eventually brings him back to the Beta timeline where Kurusu dies and the future is bleak with the potential of World War III, basically where we started in the episode before the first ever timeline change. And because Okabe doesn't send the first D-mail about Kurusu's death, we get to see how this Beta world line plays out. So instead of Alpha Suzuha coming from the future with a cheap edition time machine, we get a Suzuha coming from the future Beta world line, where she manages to land her machine on top of the roof radio building. Suzuha comes with a mission to prevent World War III and tells Okabe in order to do this, they need to save Kurusu. This idea was formulated by the future Okabe from the Beta world line. In the end, after some frantic attempts to save Kurusu, Okabe gets a message from his future self and gives his past self an idea on how to save her. He actually achieves that by saving Kurusu and entering the Stein Gates world line. So to sum up everything, the main world lines that are relevant here are the Alpha world line where Mayuri inevitably dies, CERN takes over the world, the Beta world line where Kurusu dies and World War III eventually breaks out, and finally Steins Gates, the world line where Okabe saves both Kurusu and Mayuri. Now that I explained the different timelines, it will be easy for you to understand Stein Gate 0. Stein Gate 0 takes place in the Beta Attractor Field outside of the Steins Gate, the same timeline where Okabe stops CERN by undoing all the D-mails but fails to stop Kurusu's death. So basically this timeline is pretty much the same up until episode 23. Instead of getting a message from his future self after his first failed attempt to save Kurusu, this Okabe doesn't get any help from his future self and doesn't see that video file with the instructions on how to save Kurusu. Okabe then gives up on Kurusu and stopping World War III. The Okabe from this world line is the version who ultimately sends the video message telling his past self on how to save Kurusu without losing Mayuri. So basically Stein Gate 0 is the events right after Okabe gives up and later eventually learns how to stop Kurusu's death. So the divergence from Stein Gates to Stein Gate 0 happens in episode 23. There is actually a special episode known as episode 23 Beta, which is an alternative version of episode 23 that aired with the rebroadcast of the original Stein Gates back in 2015. Although you don't really need to watch this episode special, it can give you guys a better understanding of the split between the two world lines of Stein Gates and Stein Gate 0. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and maybe I even clarified some few things. And if you guys did learn anything and you want more videos like this, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell to stay updated. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.